Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cooking with Kat and Steph on this lovely Wednesday afternoon.
Hello, friend.
Hi.
How are
so
you?
Nice to see you.
Yes, it is. It's good. Happy Wednesday to you.
I'm so glad the weather's nice.
It is. It's beautiful.
Hopefully
It's a good day.
the weather is nice where you are as well. Oh, okay. So, for those of you that are new, I'm Kat Ludwig, dietitian.
I'm Stephanie Pepper. I'm a speech language pathologist.
And we are going to do part 2 of the conversation we started last week.
Right.
So we're talking dysphagia, and we only covered signs and symptoms last week.
Wow. Only covered signs and symptoms.
Yeah, well,
We talked.
we talked a lot. We had a lot of questions.
We did, but that's a good thing.
Yes. So,
Just hit refresh.
the technology. So we used to stream from Zoom into the group, and Facebook changed things in April.
And didn't say anything. So we didn't know that that's why we weren't able to connect.
Yes. So we're not streaming from Zoom until we figure out another plan. So
It says that there should be a way for us to do it. We just haven't been able to figure that out yet.
So we will, for those that are in our membership, we'll get back to you on that.
Right.
So tonight we're going to do beef and potatoes because last week we did chicken and rice.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about the rest of the story of dysphagia.
Yeah, let's talk about causes.
What are the causes of dysphagia?
Well, there are many causes. There are the typical known causes, which is neurological things like stroke or head injury. There's also, there are some cancers that can affect cancer. Treatments can sometimes affect swallowing because it affects. Did they warm up fast enough?
I think so,
They did?
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So cancer and cancer treatments, depending on where the cancer is, the cancer itself could cause problems with swallowing, particularly if it's head and neck cancer. A lot of people who have GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disorder have a lot of problems with dysphagia.
Yeah.
So there are other esophageal issues such as eosinophilic esophagitis or EOE.
Which is a big one.
It is a big one, and I've
lately.
noticed commercials on TV about EOE now.
Yeah.
So what's causing all of this EOE? I don't know.
Autoimmune.
Wow,
People's
this is true.
immune systems are attacking their own bodies.
Yeah, true.
Hi, Patty. Hi, Grace. Hi, Kara.
Hello, everyone.
All right. So, EOE is about a mast cell, which is one immune reaction attacking in the esophagus. And it's very, very detrimental.
Yes.
Causes a lot of nasty symptoms, a lot of pain. And typically it's caused by a food or multiple types of food. So we have to be very, very careful with what people are eating. That's part of what Stephanie and I do. So we get people to change.
Very important as to what you are eating.
Yes.
Some radiation treatments that are aimed at the head and neck can cause some swallowing problems. And then there's all of the different bacterial, viral, fungal infections that can cause problems. Hormonal imbalances can cause problems. Just like we said, autoimmune can cause problems.
And it could be any autoimmune.
It could be
For the,
any.
like-
yes.
It's not just a single one. It could be
Who knows? Because-
scleroderma, lupus, EOE.
And we're seeing those things.
A lot of them.
We're seeing those things.
Yeah.
But the one that I want to focus on right now is trauma or fear.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that
Okay.
because I think that there are a lot more people with dysphagia that we would consider having dysphagia that are actually told by the medical community that there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Just who knows where it started? What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right. Was it an incident? Was it...
Or was there a problem with swallowing at one point that developed a fear?
Right.
That the problem itself resolved, which could have been an infection, could have been a bacteria, could have been,
Right.
and then the fear stayed.
Right. Because fear is a very different animal.
Fear,
You have to address it differently.
it's completely different. And there's actually more routes to take with that than there are for traditional dysphagia. But
So-
you still have dysphagia in our eyes.
Right. Yes. And a lot of times we would call that functional dysphagia because no one else can find anything wrong.
Right.
But there is something very clearly wrong.
Right. That's kind of our specialty,
It is
actually.
definitely our
That's why I
specialty.
wanted to focus on that.
Yeah.
So any questions, by all means, about fear or any trauma-related swallowing issues, Ava, ask us. Hi.
Yeah. So we just have some beef. It was labeled as stew meat. It had a little bone in it. I think it was more of a shank. So they probably were just like, I don't know what to do with this. We'll call it stew meat. So they threw it in there. So once again, we're going to do the same thing we did with the chicken last week. These strands are going this way. We just want to shorten them a little bit. I'm going to do that this week by just putting them in my little food processor. They break apart.
Chopper.
So I cooked this just in the Instant Pot, the pressure cooker. You can do this in a slow cooker. I let these cook for hours. Okay. So
In the pressure cooker or in the slow cooker?
So I did start it in the pressure cooker.
Okay.
Because it was frozen when I put it in there. So I did it high pressure for half an hour with some water. And I'm just pulling off the connective pieces. The fat is okay as long as it's not gristle.
Right.
So I am just kind of... Did you ever tell your kids not to play with their food?
Maybe. I don't remember them ever playing with their food, but there's a lot of things that I don't remember.
Some of us became chefs because
You like to play with
we
your
like
food?
to play with our food. Yeah.
That's fair.
So, I'm just kind of going through this, making sure I don't have anything tough in here. Do you just cook it in broth? Kara, normally I would have. I ran out of time today, and I did not go find broth. So normally I would have done it in broth. Yes.
But this is just water.
Yeah.
Just water.
Okay. So, and it's not super hot, but if there's a piece that I'm afraid is not going to break down, I'm not going to add it. Okay.
Right. But the fat is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. All right. We'll start there. Got my paper towel.
Yes.
Okay. And then I have a little bit of the liquid that I cooked this in.
Which was water in the beginning, but now it's broth.
Well, and it had a bone in there too.
So it's bone broth.
So
Sort of bone broth.
yeah, so these pieces, we're just going to get these nice and chopped up, okay? All right. And if you want to do gravy with this, you do the same thing we did last week. You take a little pot, you put some oil in there, or some butter, you put flour in it, you add your warm liquid to it, and you make gravy.
Yes.
Stir real good until it's all, and you're good to go. So, I'm just going to take a little bit of this out.
So this would be our minced and moist.
Yep.
We'll make it more moist by adding some of this sauce, juice, jus.
Jus.
It's a jus.
It's a jus.
But you can make it a little bit thicker with
A thickener, like a Simply Thick or a Dysphagia aid, or you can make gravy.
Or you can make gravy. Yeah.
Totally up to you.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Helen. Mini food processor. Yes, TJ Maxx. $10. This thing is one of my favorite things
Yeah.
recently.
The perfect size for a single serving.
And it's rechargeable with the...
So you can bring it with you anywhere you go.
Yeah. And I don't have to charge this thing all that often.
No?
No. I think I charge it like maybe once a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
That's pretty good.
so we've got,
Hi, Amber.
hi Amber. Okay, so we've got this here. If you can handle texture, this is good. Okay. So,
Now,
functional dysphagia.
let's talk about functional more.
Yeah.
So functional dysphagia basically is there's something wrong with your swallowing and you are having trouble eating, but there's no diagnostic test that's identifying why
Yeah.
or what.
Yeah.
Is that machine best for minced and moist as opposed to pureed?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes,
We do
it will not puree.
Yep.
We are going to puree right now in our Ninja.
I'm going to add taters.
I think that's a good idea. At least a little bit that's going to help it to
Yep.
blend smoother.
It is going to get smoother. Let's do 2, because remember, we can always add more. Okay. And then our jus. And we are going to need quite a bit because this is beef.
Right. And then the potatoes are going to thicken it up. So
Okay.
you'll need.
So with functional dysphagia,
Yeah.
we don't know which came first, the swallowing disorder or the mental health piece of this, whether it's the fear, the anxiety, was something thrown off kilter.
Out of sequence. Right. And it doesn't matter which came first. Not to us anyway.
Right.
The important thing is number one, we've got to get nutrition on track and then address the swallowing component of it.
Oh, I have to turn it on first. I forget that the Ninja has different buttons than
It's
the Blend Check.
I think it's a good safety.
I agree. Okay. I need more liquid. It's not going very well.
Right.
So I'm just going to stop it and add more liquid. Okay. So we address the nutrition first. We make sure that your muscles are getting what they need. Your body has energy. Because if you don't have the energy to eat, problem.
Then the muscles can't do what they need to do, and we can't strengthen those muscles. So your diagnostic tests are going to look at whether food goes to the right place or not.
Right.
It's not looking at the strength of that, or it may be looking at the speed of that.
And you have
But-
said that those tests set you up to succeed.
Absolutely. We set people in the perfect position.
Yeah.
We manage the rate. It's completely set for success. Unless there's something severe going on, we may not see it because it's a moment in time too.
Right. We're not looking at the whole meal.
We're not looking at a whole meal. We're looking at probably at the very most 10 bites and sips.
It's nothing.
Right. So there's also a very strong sensory component to functional dysphagia, which means the way it feels. And sometimes we've created, not created, that's the wrong way to say it. I think that we've established normal from faulty sensory information.
Right.
Which is a product of how the brain interprets.
Yep.
And you have to remember that the brain has been trying to protect you.
Yes.
Which is where some of this autoimmune stuff comes from. Your body is trying to protect you, but it's overprotecting you.
Yes.
Same thing with functional dysphagia. Your brain is trying to protect you to a fault.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what it's supposed to do. Biologically, your brain is there to keep you alive.
Right.
That's what it does.
Right. And so what happens is it protected you, you adjusted. It protected you, you adjusted. It protected you, you adjusted. Until that third, fourth, fifth time that you've adjusted, your swallowing has completely changed.
Right.
And then your brain doesn't interpret the sensory information the way it used to.
Right. Right. And so you do something different than how you initially learned.
Correct.
Just over time, gradually.
Yes, it happens over time. even when you didn't know you were adjusting, you were probably adjusting before you knew that there was a problem. But you managed it.
Yes.
Kind of like when I hurt my leg and I limp.
Yeah. Yep.
So I limp because I'm protecting that leg.
Right.
And over time, I start walking normal. But if I didn't ever allow myself to start walking normal again,
Right.
because I was afraid to hurt it,
Right.
then I would have a functional limp.
Right.
Same thing happens with the muscles of swallowing.
Right. Okay.
Blend.
Oh. Push twice.
Let it do its thing.
Oh, okay.
You're
I'm
jumping the gun.
impatient.
Yeah, you are. That's okay.
I should have only put one potato in.
Yeah, maybe. You might need some more juice.
I do need more juice.
It's getting there.
Okay.
Oh, you're brave.
And remember, if it's hot, don't close the lid.
We're warm. We're not hot.
I did it.
I think we're both surprised.
We are both surprised. I spill things. Okay.
All right.
Now we're moving. Nice.
I want that ninja in every color now that I know how well it is to transport. Yes. So BlendJet was our original transport blender. And then Ninja came out with one, and it
works a little bit better. Or a lot of it better.
I've been a Ninja fan for a while.
Speaking of, the Ninja Creamy is on sale today for $149 on Amazon. I meant to tell you earlier and I forgot. Tangent. I'll post the link. Remind me to post the link for everyone.
Of course they do that after Mother's Day.
Of course. Okay, so we can address most causes of dysphagia by managing through the symptoms, through what you tell Stephanie is wrong, and through what she hears, what she sees,
and what you feel, what you tell me that you feel. We need to work through that, because what you're feeling may be normal, but your brain is telling you it's not.
Okay. We're going to try a little bit of this and see how it is. So it's fairly thick, which we expect with the potato. It's got a little bit of texture. It needs to go a little bit longer, but for the most part, it's fairly smooth. It needs a little bit more liquid, I think.
Yeah.
Which I'll have to add water.
It has
'cause I used
good
all
flavor. You did?
I used all the liquid.
Wow.
Because I didn't put that much in there. So
Well,
we can always add more.
do you want me to get some?
No, I think I'll grab a little bit of warm water
Okay.
and I'll put it in here because there's still some meat and potatoes in there.
Well, that's true.
Okay. So depending on where the swallowing issue happens and what the cause is.
Where meaning at what level?
Correct. So is it oral, is it pharyngeal, is it esophageal?
Yep.
Where do we start, I guess? And is what you do the same regardless of the cause?
Yes and no.
Okay. Can you elaborate?
So yes, it's all the same structures that we're dealing with. But it depends on whether we're dealing with the purely sensory, purely motor, meaning movement, or a combination of both.
Okay.
But it's the same musculature. It's the same system. Right. Everybody has the same system. And most everybody most everyone's swallowing needs to be or is about the same.
Yeah.
But until you understand it, until
Right.
you know what's going on and
Right.
know what you're feeling, it can be frightening.
Yeah. And so we've heard a lot of people say, well, I feel it here, or I feel it in the very back at the top, or I feel it here. Mm-hmm. So understanding what those structures are, what is supposed to happen,
right?
What they're feeling,
and at what point during the swallow that you're feeling that.
Which that's why you need a speech therapist.
Right.
Because for those of us that are not experts in the anatomy and physiology of swallowing, we need a speech therapist that understands what's supposed to happen at every phase so that it can be identified what's going on. Is it out of sync? Is it, can you recommend natural thickener? Potato flakes, flours. We like potato flakes, especially
So for food type things or soups, potato flakes are a great way to thicken things because it's just a natural, you're getting a potato. Mm-hmm. And if you get a good quality potato flake, that is a great option.
Yeah.
But it has to be done warm. You cannot do it in cold things. Mm-hmm. The potato will not absorb, the potato flake will not absorb liquid as well when it's cold.
Yep. Okay. Another natural thickener, we've used like rice flour. It does have to be cooked though. So if you're using rice flour, I recommend making a gravy out of it. Same with wheat flour. Trying to think of another one. Arrowroot starch is very similar. Cornstarch, very similar. Mm-hmm. You would want to make a slurry and then heat it to give it that thickening power.
Right.
Yeah. So those are our recommendations there.
And then if you want something cold, you can use gelatin. Mm-hmm. But you have to heat that first, and then you add the cold to make.
Xanthan gum does work with colds, but if you're not blending it, it tends to get a little bit clumpy. Yes. So if you just use a whisk or a frother, it doesn't always work great. You may have to strain it. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about the causes of dysphagia. What about complications of dysphagia? So the first one I see is weight loss because people stop eating.
That's one of the most common ones that we're seeing in our practice now.
Mm-hmm. The other one that we don't talk about very often though is weight gain. Because people eat things that are really easy to eat, and typically those are high sugar foods. And when you're eating a lot of sugary foods, your body goes into an even worse inflammatory state. Mm-hmm. And then you start putting on pounds, but you're also getting weaker because you're not putting in protein for those muscles. So there's two ends of the spectrum here that we have to consider.
Right. Now, to be quite honest with you guys, you don't have to use your fingers. You don't have to play with your food like I am. I caught it from her.
True.
But you can use a knife with this or a spoon. Mm-hmm. I am making the minced and moist. These are super soft potatoes cooked in with the beef.
Yep.
So by just mashing it with my fork, it will have some texture. But it will taste really good.
But it's mostly going to be pureed, I think. Like this.
Essentially, it will be pureed. It will have texture.
Yeah.
So pureed does not mean no texture.
Correct. And I think this is where people also get a little bit.
This is where some people get a little mixed up because you can need pureed with no texture.
Right.
Or super fine texture.
Right.
Or you can
have pureed with
tolerate texture.
Yeah.
Now, if you can also take potatoes and whip them in a food processor, so that little mini that may get that nice and smooth by adding like milk and butter and whipping it. Mm-hmm. You could get it to a super smooth.
Yep. All right, I'm going to blend this one more time. Okay.
That's blending much better.
So other complications of dysphagia, malnutrition. We talk about that malnutrition cycle all the time.
And it's a vicious cycle because you don't eat enough and you get malnourished, and then you get malnourished, so you can't eat enough.
Right. So
because you're weak.
So we work on getting people out of that cycle.
Right.
Which is tough, and it takes a lot of grit.
It does.
It's tough. But you
it's,
can do it.
It's doable.
Yeah.
It's absolutely doable.
Dehydration.
Especially if you are fearful of choking on water, thin things. So you thicken. Some people thicken. Some just choose not to drink.
Right.
And you get less. So you're dehydrated. I feel dehydrated right now.
I know we talk about water and immediately get parched.
I'm so thirsty.
So Grace says, can food sticking in the esophagus because of dysmotility feel higher up in the back of the throat even though the esophagus is further down? This is a fantastic Stephanie question.
Yes, Grace, you are absolutely correct. So if wherever you feel it, it is quite likely a little bit farther. If you feel it here, it's likely a little farther down. Okay? If you feel it in your neck, it's typically 1 inch to 2 inches below where you feel it because there is referred sensation.
Okay. Yep. I still, every time you say it, it just, like, I have to think about it because it seems strange that, hi Edie, it seems strange that wherever you would feel it is not where it's at. But,
right.
But a lot of barium swallow x-rays prove this.
Absolutely prove this. So a lot of people will say, I feel it stuck high up in my throat. And it's not. It may be moving really slow in the esophagus, but it's not necessarily, it's not up higher. Right. So that is a very common misconception that where you're feeling it is where it's stuck or getting stuck.
Right. Okay. Aspiration. What is aspiration?
Good question. So aspiration is when food goes down the wrong tube. So everybody knows we have 2 tubes. One we breathe in, down, and one that food goes down to get to your stomach.
So the one we breathe in is in the front.
The one you breathe in is in the front. And your vocal cords are a little bit farther down in that tube, in that space. So when food or liquid gets down below the vocal cords in the airway, that is considered aspiration.
This is very important to understand that there is a difference between aspiration and penetration.
Right.
So what is penetration?
So penetration is when it gets into the wrong tube but never goes lower than the vocal cords.
Okay. So this is where we would cough, typically?
Hopefully.
Unless it's silent.
Right. And usually silent aspiration comes after a lot of aspiration.
Okay. So it doesn't happen right away.
Not usually, unless there's neurological things that have affected sensory.
Okay.
But I know a lot of people are very nervous about getting aspiration pneumonia, and they limit themselves because of that fear. There is research out that shows that there is much less aspiration pneumonia than previous years, and people have been
thought.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It is actually rarer than you think. So that coughing sensation that you have, never stop a cough.
Right.
Never stop a cough.
Right.
Because that is your body protecting your airway.
Okay, I'm going to do this one more time. So I feel like with meats, we have to sometimes blend them 3, 4, 5 times to get them as smooth as we want them.
Yes.
Okay.
How is it?
It's thinner because I added more water.
Oh, it's smooth.
It's pretty darn smooth.
Yes.
And I could even go one more time, I think.
I think you could, but here's the moral of the story. Add lots of liquid when you're cooking your beef so that you have plenty to add that has lots of flavor.
Yes. Yeah, so I didn't add enough liquid to mine. Add more. Plus, it's gonna the fat out of the meat is gonna melt as well, and you're gonna get that in here. So you don't necessarily have to add butter or oil or anything like that, because there should be enough in the beef.
Right.
So
there is a question about getting a description of regurgitation. So that's good. So there is a difference between reflux and regurgitation.
Yes.
So reflux is, I'll get to the regurgitation, I promise, is when food goes down the esophagus, gets into the stomach, and then the stomach can't keep it there.
Yep.
And it comes back up with acid in it.
Yep.
Okay? So reflux comes from the stomach up, and the acid is the biggest problem.
Yep.
With regurgitation, what happens is there's usually no acid there because it never made it to the stomach.
Right.
So what happens is with regurgitation, the esophagus isn't able to keep it moving south or down to your stomach.
Because gravity doesn't exactly work in your esophagus like it works on the rest of the planet.
Right.
Turns out.
So what happens is then the esophagus allows it to kind of go back and forth as it's waiting to get to your stomach. And for some people, they can regurgitate all the way up back to their mouth or even their nasal cavity, but there's not acid in it.
Right. So regurgitation and reflux. Same pathway, different ending or different midpoint, I guess. So our next complication is what we talked about earlier, fear or phagophobia, which is the fear of eating and swallowing.
Right. Same thing. Same. Your brain is protecting you from something that you don't understand. So seek out understanding, because that's what we do is we need you to, we work really hard to help you understand what's going on, because that's going to help relieve some fear.
It is. We also often recommend that when people are working with us, they also work with a counselor to talk some of those things out in that professional environment, just to make sure that you are addressing both the mental piece and the physical piece.
The physical swallowing, the actual swallowing.
Yep.
And one of the things that we find happens very often is that it starts out as an esophageal issue. Maybe that regurgitation is happening, maybe reflux is happening, and over time, it becomes a pharyngeal issue also, because you're limiting what you eat. You're not using those muscles as often. So we've got atrophy and we've got malnutrition that is going against you. So we find that the oral and pharyngeal phase can be affected over time, even when it starts out as an esophageal issue. And there are many speech therapists out there that won't touch esophageal dysphagia with a 10-foot pole.
And understandably so. In my perspective, I understand why.
Yes, I was one of those people for a while. I didn't, because I didn't understand it as well. I didn't understand how to help people as well. Now I do.
But we've
been doing this.
So regurgitation brings food back up. So it's not that it brings food back up. It never gets to the stomach. And it just kind of bounces around up and down in the esophagus. So it has to come in contact with the acid in order for it to bring that acid back up. If it never gets down to the stomach, it can't bring acid back up. Whereas it's typically just a motility issue with the esophagus. So
typically.
Yep.
Now, if you have a problem with your lower esophageal sphincter and it never really closes, there could be acid mixing up in that just by nature of it.
The anatomy and
but it's not necessarily because the food got down there.
Yep.
To begin with.
So Grace says, how can a speech language therapist help esophageal dysphagia?
Well, a speech language therapist that has a dietitian that they work super closely with can prevent worsening symptoms can prevent it from becoming pharyngeal in nature. So we've got to maintain the musculature of the oral and pharyngeal phase while you're working on the nutritional component to help decrease the issues related to the esophageal.
Yep. I'm going to touch on these last couple of complications before we go to the next question.
Good.
Okay. So the other one is social isolation, because people who have who struggle with eating don't like to be around other people when they eat necessarily, especially people they don't know, because it can be very off-putting for them. It can be embarrassing. So we do a lot of helping people advocate for themselves for what they need and working on that self-confidence piece.
Yep.
And then the relationship complexities, both your relationship with food and your relationship with other people, because they are both affected with dysphagia.
Right. That is true.
Okay, so shall we touch on this upper esophageal sphincter issues? What can happen and what might that feel look like?
So, yes. So upper esophageal sphincter.
It's at the top of the esophagus.
It's at the top of the esophagus. That is correct. So it only opens when your larynx rises and pulls forward. So we call that laryngeal excursion. So it helps to open the upper esophageal sphincter. Now, the biggest problem that I have seen in my years with upper esophageal sphincter issues is it not opening at the right time, which speaks a lot about the coordination of a swallow.
Okay. So
And how those muscles are engaging to help maneuver the larynx forward so that the upper esophageal sphincter can open.
Right. So you have to breathe to live. Your trachea or your windpipe or your airway, whatever you want to call it, is a big tube. So it has to close, and if I understand right, your larynx has to rise and pull forward so that can close, and your esophagus is narrow. It's not as wide.
It's kind of almost a flattened tube.
Yep. So when
it's not in use.
When that comes up and goes forward, it opens up so that food can go down there. Right?
Yes.
So if it's not opening up all the way,
or not opening up wide enough, because there are specific swallowing muscles that help move everything out of the way to protect your airway and to open your upper esophageal sphincter. And if that's not working correctly, there could be a problem.
Right. So what might that feel like?
So I've had people tell me it feels like I'm choking.
Okay.
It feels like something's stuck.
Okay.
Because if it doesn't, if you swallow and your upper esophageal sphincter doesn't open to accept that food into the esophagus, it's going to sit in the pharynx,
which is the area in the...
Yeah. So there's two sinus areas called the piriform sinuses that are intended to be kind of a protective, like a space, an encased space where things go. If you fill up those spaces, and you may feel that, that may make people cough. So there's a lot of sensory stuff going on if your upper esophageal sphincter is not opening, because you're feeling stuff all over that should not be felt.
Right. Okay. So that sensory piece has to be addressed, and the rest of it also has to be addressed.
Well, the opening of the upper esophageal sphincter has to be addressed.
Okay.
And then we have to talk about sensory and what that feels like, and how to clear the piriform sinuses when that happens.
That's where the speech therapist comes in handy. So do we want to talk over tests a little bit? We've kind of talked about like the barium x-ray.
Yes.
A little bit.
So a barium swallow. So there are two two different kinds of x-rays. So there's a barium swallow and there's a modified barium swallow.
They are not the same thing.
They are not. So if you have a barium swallow, they're probably only looking at the esophagus. They're not, there's usually not a speech pathologist there for a barium swallow because it's just the radiologist looking at
Here to here.
at the esophagus and how it works.
Okay. So modified.
A modified barium swallow, they're looking at the intricacies of the oral and pharyngeal phase. Now, a good speech pathologist will ask them to view the esophagus also, so that we have an idea of what's going on there. But it is specific to mostly oral and pharyngeal.
Okay. So would we call that a swallow study?
So a swallow study, yes. So modified barium swallow study, or video fluoroscopic swallow study are really all the same thing. It just depends on what your hospital organization calls it.
Right. Okay. So, and this I had someone say something to me a couple weeks ago about a cookie swallow.
A lot of people call it the cookie swallow because we do usually have some form of solid food. A lot of speech therapists will choose a cookie.
Okay. So a couple of things I want to mention. If you're not sure what you're having done, send us a message. 2, you can ask, if they don't show your esophagus, you can ask them to do a view of your esophagus when you have a modified barium swallow. Mm-hmm. You have the right to ask.
I mean, all they can do is tell you, no, we don't do that. It's worth asking.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, and endoscopy is where they put you out, they put you to sleep.
Or put you in twilight.
They put a camera down there and they take a look at what's going on. Typically, they go all the way down to your stomach, and that's to see if there's any irritation, any ulcerations, any inflammation. They may take a biopsy. This is how we really diagnose celiac disease. It's how they diagnose H. pylori infection. Mm-hmm. It's how we diagnose eosinophilic esophagitis and a number of other things. Mm-hmm. So very, very helpful. If you're having it done, don't be nervous about it. It does not hurt. I had one done. They put you to sleep. You wake back up. It's usually real quick. A FEES test. You are FEES certified.
I am FEES certified. So FEES is also a scope of sorts that goes in through intranasally. And then the camera itself stops and sits just above the juncture of the upper esophageal sphincter and the airway. Mm-hmm.
And then they have you swallow something.
Then you have to, yes. So you have to put coloring in it. So typically they use blue because there's nothing blue in your body.
I hope not. Right.
So that we can see it. But there's a point during the swallow that the camera is completely obstructed because you're swallowing. Right. And everything squeezes together and you can't see through that. So there is a point where you can't see anything.
Okay.
Not my favorite diagnostic test.
Right.
It's a little more intrusive than a modified barium swallow because we're sticking a camera in. A lot of people are super sensitive and can't handle it.
Right.
But
okay. The next one is a manometry.
So manometry is where they go in and measure the pressure of your esophagus, how well your esophagus is moving
things
food
down
through to your stomach.
And this one is very intrusive and very uncomfortable.
Yes.
And people hate it. It gives very, very, very good information, but we've had a lot of people that have not been able to tolerate it.
Right.
So we like that information, but if you can't get it done, do not feel bad.
Right. We can come up with some strategies.
Yeah.
Even if we don't have that information. Worst test.
Yeah. We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And then a pH study or a Bravo study.
Right. So they're looking at how much acid is in your esophagus.
Yeah. So typically they take this little mechanism and they put the scope down there and they attach it to your esophageal wall. They don't let you take any proton pump inhibitors or anti-acid medications for 72 hours before, because they want to know what
truly is in there. They don't want you to limit anything.
There shouldn't be any acid in your esophagus, so that's going to tell how much. And then a CT scan or an MRI, so just a picture.
And that's just a picture. We can't see in a CT or MRI, we can't see what the swallow actually does, but we can see if there's anything stuck in there.
Yep. So we had a ton of questions. If you would scroll back up through our comments.
Yeah.
Okay, right? So esophageal dysphagia, but if I have thicker liquids or yogurt, mousse, etc., I really feel it sticking up high in my throat like it's not moving. Yeah. I mean, if your esophagus is not constricting, or if it doesn't have peristalsis, which is that movement of those muscles to pull things down, it's not going to go anywhere right away. It's going to take time.
Right. But if you're feeling it, where does it say? I really feel it sticking high up in my throat like it's not moving. So it may be beyond the upper esophageal sphincter, but you're feeling it high in the throat. Or it may be that it's, high up in the esophagus or lower in the esophagus, and you're feeling it.
What about
below
residue? She could have residue up there if it's too thick?
Yes, but if there's residue high up in the throat, that speaks to pharyngeal dysphagia, because you shouldn't have residue if your muscles are strong enough to push it
down
into the esophagus.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Is it normal for some food to not move through the lower esophagus without a few sips of water? It's not normal.
No. But common in esophageal issues, yes.
Yeah.
And so there's different muscle types or different tissue types in the upper versus lower. So depending on what your problem is and where the problem lies, it could be that the bottom part of your esophagus has more difficulty than the top.
Okay. Megan did have to ask to have the camera show her esophagus for her
Good job, Megan.
swallow study. Yes. Upper GI barium swallow study done by a radiologist, local hospital, more involved than a barium swallow and not a modified. Well, no, that's a GI. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, upper GI.
That's an upper GI study. Okay.
I could see the barium go down and stop in the middle of the esophagus.
Yep. The manometry was the worst test. Hated it. Yep. Oh yeah. So that makes sense. If you had a nasal feeding tube, it probably wouldn't be as torturous.
If you're used to those sensory things.
An upper GI barium swallow is not the same as a barium swallow. They're different tests looking for different things. So GI is a GI. Swallow study is different. Okay. Referred pain.
Refer pain to other body areas from pharyngeal and esophageal, i.e. cardiac and back pain.
So typically we misdiagnose heartburn as other kinds of pain.
Right.
Often.
So, and depending on what's going on pharyngally and esophageally, so there's potential for there to be a diverticulum, either pharyngally, that's called a Zinker's diverticulum, and then there's other diverticulum in the esophagus that if those pouches are filled up and don't clear could cause pressure, and I would imagine it could cause back pain. I imagine it could cause all sorts of referred pain if there is some kind of pouch or stricture that doesn't allow food to clear.
Right. So for those of you that aren't sure what that is, a diverticulum is anytime there's a tube where, you know, when you have a balloon and you can push out the balloon into like a bubble, that happens in an area of that tube, that would be a diverticulum.
Right.
It's not supposed to be there. It's not supposed to be pouched out like that.
But it can fill with food and or liquid, most usually food.
Yes. And typically we worry about that in the large intestine, and we call that diverticulitis when you have an infection from one of those. Mm-hmm. But people don't think about the fact that it can happen anywhere throughout your GI tract. Mm-hmm. Even in your pharynx and your esophagus.
Yes.
Some folks have achalasia, and this causes,
that can be painful. Yes.
Yeah. So anytime there's something where it's not supposed to be, it can cause pain.
Yes.
I see patients at a little hospital that have had bariatric surgery. So after the bariatric surgery, they complain of gas pain because when they do that, they put carbon dioxide to make sure everything is in the right spot. And that carbon dioxide can get trapped in mm-hmm. pockets in the chest cavity or mm-hmm. in the abdominal cavity, and it causes pain. And so we always say, you're going to have to walk around, which is very difficult after you've had GI surgery.
Yep.
But so that's air, basically. That's CO2 that's not supposed to be there.
And causes pressure, which therefore causes pain.
So anytime there's pressure from anything mm-hmm. in a place where there's not typically, mm-hmm. you're going to have that symptom.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell what things are from in the chest and the GI mm-hmm. Abdominal cavity a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. We covered a lot today.
We did. We didn't try this one.
No, we didn't. Let's try it. This is going to have more texture. And of course, now it's a little bit cool. This is going to require more chewing. Cold. It's not cool. It's cold. But if you have it with the potato, mm-hmm. so I would even say this would make a great like shepherd's pie, which would be a great casserole.
Yep.
You said not to suppress a cough after eating, drinking, but if you do, desensitization, doesn't that include suppressing a cough?
No, not at all. So when I work on desensitization, I will never ask you to not cough. Because coughing is typically intended, like I would need to know, like I would want to see x-ray proof that about when you're coughing. If there is nothing there may be some suppression of cough. But there would need to be some x-ray studies, some diagnostic tests that I would know what's happening, what the cough is from. Mm-hmm. If the cough is a learned cough, then yes, we would have to suppress that a little bit. But we would do that through sensory things mm-hmm. and not just saying don't cough.
Right. So you have to know if the cough is protecting you or not. And if it's not,
I'd have to know that first. But then we'd use sensory things to change how the brain is receiving the information mm-hmm. there. So mm-hmm. you have to go through a number of steps. But that's kind of a tricky, but I would say it's not just saying don't cough.
Right.
Because that doesn't work.
Right.
Because the brain is going to override it.
Right.
Even if it's just a learned behavior.
Right.
Over some sensory things that happened a while back, we'd have to retrain the sensations
yep.
that's happening.
Yep. Megan, yes, it's beef and potatoes. It's just some stew meat and roasted or boiled potatoes. They're in the slow cooker. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, great questions. Looks like we have a good crowd. What other questions do we have? We have a little bit of time left.
Yeah.
But if there's no questions,
and you can all send them to us too.
Send us questions.
Put them in the group. Send us a message. If you're in the membership, send them through the membership. We answer quickest in the membership if you have questions.
Absolutely. If you don't know about the membership, mm-hmm. We can drop a link for you to check out the membership.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Or ask us. Send us a text or a message about mm-hmm. the membership, and we would love for you to check it out.
Yeah. All right.
This has been fun.
Yeah, this is good. I feel like we covered a ton of information today. We had a couple people we haven't seen in a while.
I know.
So excited about that. So happy to see you.
Now I want pot roast. I don't blame you because this is good.
I mean, pot roast is good protein, good source of iron.
Oh, some carrots in with that would have been really good.
I meant to bring a carrot and I forgot. So it's okay. Next time we'll do carrots too. Mm-hmm.
I have a whole row of carrots planted this year.
Perfect. My husband would have had us add Western dressing to the beef.
Oh.
Because it's delicious.
Okay. Next time.
I think I ran out. I think I ate all of it. So I have to get more Western dressing.
So now we'll have to do this again.
Yep.
Because,
all right.
because Eric said so.
Because Eric said so, yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great week. You're very welcome. What is Western dressing?
It's like a sweet...
It's a salad dressing. It's called Western.
Yeah.
It's similar to French dressing.
Yeah, but I think it's sweeter. I don't know. I'd never had it until Eric made me try it with pot roast. It's a North Dakota thing, I guess. I don't know.
We're going to try it.
All right. We'll see you later, everybody. Love ya. Be safe. Enjoy the weather if you have good weather. See you next week.